Hi YouTube, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be making a Chinese-inspired beef brisket and tendon beef noodle soup. The noodles from today's recipe are created from our friend Chris Cooking Nashville. We recently did a collaboration video with Chris and he created these noodles for a beef stroganoff recipe, which we will link in the description below. We're going to be making the beef and the tendon in the Instant Pot because it's the fastest way, and we'll show you how to make the noodles in the oven. This is a great recipe if you're craving that traditional beef noodle soup, but you want a low carb or carnivore version of it. Before we get into it, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us spread the message on this way of eating and help as many people as possible. So let's get right into it. So for the soup base, we're gonna need 5 ingredients. The first one is obviously the beef. We're using beef rib finger meat. Feel free to substitute with beef brisket. We have some beef tendon. You can find this at most butchers or Asian grocery stores. The next ingredient is coconut aminos. So this is a soy sauce substitute. So basically the ingredients are fermented coconut sap and sea salt. So if you're animal-based but you want something to mimic that soy sauce flavor without obviously the soy, this is a good option. And then another carnivore-friendly seasoning that we like to use to give it that umami flavor is red boat fish sauce. The ingredients in this one are just anchovies and sea salt as well. So this one is carnivore-friendly. If you're 100% carnivore and you're eliminating all other seasonings, then just eliminate the coconut aminos. So for the full recipe and the detailed instructions and quantities, visit our blog at justrealfood.com. So the first thing we're gonna do is just cut up the tendons. Tendons are basically pure protein, so it's a great option to balance out the fattiness of brisket or the rib finger meat that we're using and just increase the protein quantity in the dish. These things are pretty tough, so you wanna make sure that your knife is really sharp. Once you cook these in the Instant Pot, they become really nice and tender. They have a ton of collagen in them, so they're very healthy for you. Next step is to cut up this beef rib finger meat. Like I mentioned earlier, it's the meat in between the rib bones of the cow. It's super tender, so if you've ever slow cooked beef ribs before, you know that it's very delicious and succulent. So it's a great option if you want something tender. It's a little bit more expensive than brisket. You can cut these into about 2-inch pieces because they do shrink a little bit in the Instant Pot. This is about 2.5 pounds of beef. So before we put everything in the Instant Pot, we're gonna blanch the tendon and the beef quickly. It's just a traditional Chinese cooking method. It helps kind of purify the aroma of the beef. So this is optional, but you can blanch it with a couple pieces of ginger and that just gives it a nice aroma as well. So we'll cut a couple slices. Ginger. Just a couple pieces like this is fine. We don't really eat the ginger, it's just part of the blanching process and just for some flavor. So we'll take the beef and the tendons over to the stovetop for a quick blanch. So the next step is to basically just dump everything into the Instant Pot. We have our blanched beef and tendon here. We have our fish sauce. We have our coconut aminos. And we have some beef broth. Feel free to use beef broth, water, or bone broth. Just make sure everything is well combined and the beef is almost fully covered, just enough so it's partially submerged. Make sure all the coconut aminos and the fish sauce is well blended into the beef. We don't have to add any additional salt because it is quite salty already. So we'll put the lid on, seal the vent, and just pressure cook this for 30 minutes on high. Okay, so as the beef brisket and tendon is cooking in the Instant Pot, we will start on our noodle. The first thing I've done is preheated the oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. So like I said earlier, these noodles are created by Chris Cooking Nashville in a video we did where we made beef stroganoff. We love these noodles so much that we wanted to try them in our own beef noodle soup recipe. The whole recipe is done in a food processor or a blender, and it just requires 4 ingredients. So the first ingredient is eggs. We'll just crack them all into our blender or KitchenAid. The next ingredient is some mozzarella cheese. Next ingredient is some powdered egg whites or egg white powder. It's also known as albumin. Find it on Amazon or some kitchen stores. And the final ingredient is some gelatin powder. You can either use bovine or beef gelatin. Today we're using some pork gelatin. So all we have to do is make sure this is blended really well. Once the egg batter is fully blended, we want to pour it into some silicone lined trays. You can do this with some folded up parchment paper, but we find that with using silicone trays, it just comes out a little bit more even. So take a silicone baking tray and put it into a regular baking tray, and we'll pour in about half the liquid. You can find these silicone trays on Amazon. They're quite inexpensive. So just make sure they're fully even. You can balance it out just by kind of shimmying the liquid around the tray. So we'll put these into the 325 degrees Fahrenheit oven for 15 minutes. So the noodles are in the oven for 15 minutes. We let them cool completely. Now we're gonna cut them into strands. The good thing about having these trays is they come out really nicely. So I think the easiest way to do it is actually just to flip it over. Feel free to cut these noodles as thin or as thick as you like. We're gonna go pretty thin today just so it fills up more space in the bowl. Make sure you have a very sharp knife. As you can see, the noodles are pretty strong. Okay, so the next step is assembly. So we'll take some of our noodles here, put them into our bowl. So each tray of noodles is about 4 eggs, so take that into account when you're planning your meals. So we let our beef brisket and tendon natural release for about 15 minutes. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah. So the soup smells amazing. I'm gonna scoop some of these beef and tendons into the noodle bowl. Okay, this smells amazing. Finally gonna go in for a taste test. First, I just wanna taste the soup. See how that turned out. Super umami, really rich, flavorful soup. The noodles came out really well. They're holding up in the broth really strong. Let's give the noodles a taste first. Usually with these sort of keto zero carb noodles, sometimes they're not very strong, especially in soup bases, but the way that these are made, they're super strong and hold together really well. They hold all the flavor of the soup. Now let's try the beef. Just melts. Has those traditional Chinese flavors, but without the soy. It's just something we grew up eating, having noodle soups, something we've always missed. So having a dish like this just brings back a lot of memories and feelings. Let's try a piece of the tendon. So like I said earlier, tendon is basically just pure protein, super high in collagen, and just increases the overall protein of the dish. Became super tender in the Instant Pot. So for the full recipe, make sure to check out our blog at justrealfood.com. And thanks again to Chris from Chris Cooking Nashville for creating this amazing noodle recipe. We just loved how we could combine it with our own traditional way of eating to create a Asian-inspired beef noodle soup. If you liked our video today, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comments below whether there are any other Asian-inspired dishes that you want us to make a keto or carnivore version of. Until next time.